For more on other major stories that dominated headlines this month on the African continent, I'm now joined by the head of Africa Peace and Security Governance Program at the Institute for Security Studies, Dr. Andrews Atta-Asamoah. Dr. Asamoah, it's always great having you on the show this evening. Thank you so much for joining us. Welcome.
Thank you very much for having me.
Let's talk about the latest developments in Mozambique. Insurgency, the brazen attacks should surely now send warnings to the rest of SADC to act fast before things spiral out of control.
Precisely. It looks like the region hasn't really given it the kind of attention, the gravity of the situation demands. And so in this particular case where the situation is spreading to more of commercial centers, but also to areas of not just national interest, but areas of specific economic and international interest, it's a clarion call on the region to act fast. And the danger is that the more it succeeds in hotspots like that, the easier is it to spread not just across the country, but beyond. So you are right. I do agree with you.
In as much as all eyes are on the SADC region to act fast, but I suppose then all eyes are on South Africa as well, because, last year South Africa was chairperson of the African Union, and the expectation was that they should have taken action and in a more decisive manner. So what is your analysis of, the most probable response plan by SADC that they should have implemented?
It looks like they should have given a lot of support to Mozambique by now. But, when a country doesn't ask you to come in, it's a bit difficult to move in. What I expect SADC to do is to mobilize a bit of regional pressure to get Mozambique to agree to support. But there's need for the region itself to be ready to go in and help. I understand that some of the countries in the region will be fearful about a possible spillover. But it looks like with the trajectory of the conflict, it's more of a call for all to be involved because it's just an issue waiting to hit every other one. And so what I expect is for SADC to mobilize regional support and then provide that support to Mozambique so that the situation can be contained and dealt with at this particular level. Looking at where it's headed, every region, every country is really threatened.
So has a diagnosis of the genesis of the problem been made as yet? Is it really about the vast mineral wealth found in the northern part of Mozambique?
It's a whole mix of issues. The mineral resources, as you said, but years and years of marginalization and a whole mix of political issues mixed together. So it's difficult to say it's just one issue. But the mineral resources in a region like that always escalates the issue. What that means is that if the roots, it's not military in a way, it means that going for the military solution, there has to be other considerations as well. The region cannot shoot its way to a solution. The solution has to be a mix of both military and non-military solution. And so it's a whole mix of issues.
So what do you attribute the government's failure to address this issue decisively? Is it a lack of capacity or there's simply no willingness at all on the part of government?
There's an element of capacity, but it's also the nature of the issues. Whenever issues come up like this, where it's a mix of marginalization, a mix of issues of extremism, and a mix of issues of terrorism, it's always very difficult. It takes a while for governments to figure out exactly what is happening, who are behind the issues at different levels, to do an actor mapping and to be able to respond appropriately. It looks like we've not seen as robust a response as the situation needs. I do hope that the spread into areas like Palma will be the real call that will get not just the capital, but other actors beyond the region to come in to see this as a full-blown, massive threat to the region, which needs real action for a solution to happen. At the moment, it's far bigger than just what Mozambique alone can contain. It's something that has reached the level of threat to international peace and security. So SADC has a role to play there, as well as other international partners. And this is when they really need to act and act fast.
All right, Dr. Atta-Asamoah, let's take a look at other news on the continent, focusing specifically on Rwanda, wherein a report commissioned by the French government on Friday found that France actually bore serious responsibilities in the Rwanda genocide of 1994. So will this bit of admission from the French perhaps help resolve tense relations between France and Rwanda?
It's really going to help in a major way. But that report alone will not answer all the questions that all of us have been asking about the situation, particularly the role of France. But I think that the good thing about this report is the fact that it was done by the French themselves, and it admits to some level of responsibility in what happened, particularly what France could have done, and the fact that they turned a blind eye to what was an obvious mobilization on those who perpetrated the genocide. That admission is a very good step to understanding the history, because the lack of clarity has been part of the reason why the relationship between France and Kigali has been tense. And so this is an opportunity to understand and provide a basis for the way forward. If you look at the relationship between the two countries, it's been warming up gradually. So this report actually provides room for both partners to know where the issues are and to take off from there. I expect relationships to continue to warm up and the countries get back to a very good relationship going forward.
And just picking up on that point, Dr. Atta-Asamoah, I mean, remember that Rwanda has long accused France of complicity, and now the government says that it represents an important step towards a common understanding of France's role in the genocide against the Tutsis. So what should be the ideal way forward in terms of thawing the relations between the two countries?
I think it's been years and years of finger-pointing, accusations, and denial. What is important now is that there's an independent report on the French side. I do hope that the Rwandese may have their own version of issues, which may come close to what the French Commission came up with. And given the eagerness of both sides to, warm relations and move forward, I think it's now time for the two to engage positively in a give and take form of exchange and see what the way forward presents for both of them. I do believe that on several fronts they need each other, particularly on trade, but also past history of having, relationships. And so that is important. This is a first step in an open conversation between the two diplomatic setups of the two countries. At this point, I think they need to take it into more of a diplomatic negotiation and see what they can come to so that relations can be restored fully.
All right, let's now go to Ethiopia now, shall we, Dr. Atta-Asamoah, as the United Nations begins to probe allegations of human rights abuses in Tigray. What is at stake for Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, who has admitted Eritrean role in the conflict?
The good news is that we now know, at least from official sources, that the Eritreans were there. I think what is at stake is, what he will be apprehensive about will be the direction of the reports, particularly when it's clear that there's been massive abuses and use of violence against civilians. And I think his apprehension will be around whether he's going to be named in issues of war crimes or not. And it's also positive that there is going to be a joint commission, investigation, so that at least whatever comes out, both sides, both on the Ethiopian side and the international community, can accept it positively. That is positive. I think that it is the kind of justice we are asking for. The next is that the results of any investigation will be accepted by all sides, and there will be a follow-through in terms of, whether there are actors that need to be sanctioned. I do hope that that will happen so that there will be closure and justice for those who have been on the receiving side of all the violence that we've seen in that part of the country.
Doesn't it strike you as particularly peculiar, Dr. Asamoah, the fact that Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed is a recipient of a Nobel Peace Prize, yet his government has repeatedly downplayed the severe impact of the human rights abuses, especially on the people of Tigray?
It's an obvious thing that cannot go, that no one can gloss over. And I think that is, again, I want to believe that it's part of the reason why he wants to set the record straight and accept international investigations in that sense. But it is something that really points to the way everything has been handled. I wished we should have seen more of the effect of that price on his choices, but that is not what we saw. I believe personally that some mistakes have been made, which the investigations will be able to unravel. And then we see what the international community will do from there once we have concrete proof of what happened and who was behind the use of massive violence against innocent people on the ground.
Okay, now in North Africa, Algerians anti-government protesters are now back on the streets. Do we know what has sparked the latest wave of discontent?
It's simple. Nothing has changed. 2019, they succeeded in getting Bouteflika out. That was step one, success one. I think COVID pushed the protesters off the streets. They didn't get back to their homes because they had seen the change they've been demanding, which is an overhaul of the political system of the country. That hasn't happened, and with the easing of the COVID pandemic gradually, people are finding they need to go back to the streets, and particularly because it's an anniversary. And so clearly, it just means that people want change. The change hasn't happened, and they are registering their commitment to keep pushing until they see the kind of change they need in the country. I think that this really is a registration of the will of the people to see change. And so the leadership will have to sit up and make the necessary changes before the people will get back into their homes.
Okay, and in Congo, President Ngweso was re-elected with 88% of the vote last week. So what does this victory mean for the Congolese, given that the fact that the main opposition boycotted the polls and the other opposition candidates who participated said, perhaps as expected, that vote was marred by fraud?
First of all, I think for someone who has been there for 36 years, a renewal of his mandate is no news. Neither does it promise a change. It's going to be business as usual. The bit that is disappointing is the inability of the opposition to have tested the system so that they can push the boundaries of entrenched rule by one person, at least a bit further into getting him off leading for so long. And so what I expect will be business as usual. I mean, he's been there for so long, and so I don't see any new idea he's going to introduce. The country is indebted in so many ways. That will continue to be his options. But the opposition will have to come again, because it doesn't appear boycotting elections has really worked in other jurisdictions. And so they will need to revisit their options and see how they'll be able to restore power peacefully from the president, rather than a total boycott, because it doesn't always work out the way you want, because you give him overwhelming approval in a way that gives him so much room to do what he wants to do, which is not necessarily always in the interest of the country itself.
All right, Dr. Atta-Asamoah, great chatting to you. Thank you so much for your valuable insight and analysis on this matter.